My gosh, I'm smiling. I'm just so glad to see everyone. We've all been joking from the little encounters that we have with actual people. You know, I've lived working from home now for several years. And so even in everyday life, not COVID life, I'm at home working. And so the random encounters with people at the grocery store or the doctor's office have been the most stimulating thing, like having spoken with a real person, even with our masks and our gear on. But it does something to your humanness to see to see other people beyond our own family. So you all look beautiful, and I'm thrilled to be on today. So welcome. This is the first living room session of the new year, 2021, and what a promising year it looks like it will be. Those of us living in the US and working on this work are breathing a sigh of relief. I'm sure others elsewhere are too. Thank goodness. Oh, I got it. Thanks. So it's great. It's on a very positive note that we're here and joining, and we know that we have work ahead of us, but where we feel somehow supported a little bit more than we have been in the past. And for this particular living room session, we're thrilled again to be collaborating with Ethical Metalsmiths so that we can bring the second ethics session. And we have Mark Wheeler with us again today. We've prepared with your feedback. Thank you, all of you that put comments our way. We've prepared another interesting discussion that goes a bit deeper. For this one, we're calling it the basically navigating real decision making. You know, so how do you use ethics frameworks and approaches when you're confronting something complicated? And we'll get to that. So this is, as it always has been, a safe space to share your ideas and your thinking. And so everyone that's participating in this meeting has to agree with themselves and with each other that we are going to refrain from any language that is attacking or anything like that. And please be kind if you are messaging someone in the chat so that you are not offending them in any way. The idea here is that we make a safe space for conversation. That does not mean that we're unwilling to tackle challenging topics. It just means that we do so in a respectful way. So if there's something that you feel the need to bring up when we have these conversations, please do. Letting you know now that the next living room session in February is going to be on the 19th. And we're going to cover the topic, get started. It's a getting started on the topic of recycled gold. It's one of the most common questions that we get through our consultancy is, what is it? What does it mean? Is it ethical? Is it not ethical? What does it do what I think it's doing or not? So that's what we're going to be covering on the 19th in collaboration with initiatives in art and culture. Some of you might know of the Gold Conference that initiative in arts and culture puts on, and we will be doing that in collaboration with them. So also, I wanted to thank everyone that felt that they had it within their means and interests to make a contribution to supporting the living room sessions. We thought we would test that out and are incredibly grateful to everyone that contributed. We're grateful to everyone that did not contribute. We're really glad that you're here. So it's about the community and what we do together. So I'm going to hand it over to Alexandra Hart. She is the executive director of Ethical Metalsmiths to say a few words.
Everyone, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. This is really exciting. We're grateful to be a guest at the living room session to collaborate with Christina Miller Consulting on the ethics session. This is the second session. in a series. So we're very, very pleased and very grateful. So why would we be so comfortable collaborating with Christina Miller? The platform she's created for deeper, real conversations around responsible jewelry issues. Well, she is the visionary co-founder of Ethical Metalsmiths. So it is an obvious and wonderful and pleasure to be sharing this stage today and sharing our consultant, Mark Wheeler, the ethics consultant. Just briefly, before I get to Mark, a few highlights for Ethical Metalsmiths. We have been developing the Emerging Jeweler membership over the last year, and we have a Meet the Mentors open house free to anyone who wants to join on January 29th at 11 a.m. Pacific. And I will add several links in the chat for you guys to follow up. So everyone is welcome there. This year, our So Fresh, So Clean student competition is going to be bigger and better than ever. We're introducing a new BIPOC scholarship involved and new prizes. So I will also add the link in the chat for that. Our blog, The Source, is another place where we are really digging deeper into the issues and exploring, checking in different perspectives. And we welcome comments. We welcome any suggestions. We welcome guest authors to work with us. And so I'll add the link there. And then also, if you don't want to miss sort of upcoming news from Ethical Metalsmiths, just join our subscribe for news on our landing page. So Mark, full transparency here, is my husband, my spouse. We talk a lot at home about ethical issues, especially around Ethical Metalsmiths. And he offered to consult to Ethical Metalsmiths as a official ethics consultant, if and only if all volunteer. So not only are we grateful, but we have a professional, the director of Ethics Institute at San Diego State University, and someone who's very intimately aware of the issues just through our marriage, I guess. So, as last time there was a request for further reading, and Mark has promised to make the further reading available in the follow-up email that Christina and Maggie will be sending. So there'll be a reading list of suggestions, including some of his own publications. So anyway, back to you guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alix, and thank you, Mark, for coming back to help us navigate through these complex issues. So I am going to share my screen and do a little refresher on our first ethics session. And for those of you, some of you may have attended other living room sessions we've done. Some of them, we are really focused on one particular issue and doing a lot of learning and conversation. In sessions like this, it's more reflective, and we're developing some of our decision-making skills. So let me just get started here. Okay, so I'm just going to share this first slide. Sorry. Okay. So when we're thinking about ethics in the jewelry industry, there's a lot to consider. And as our friend Jared Holstein, who's on the call, likes to say, we've inherited a jewelry industry. We've inherited this system. And this system doesn't always match our values or the types of impacts that we would like to have. So all of us are active in building a new phase of the jewelry industry that matches our values and respects each person involved in the industry and works to protect our future through sustaining the environment that we share. So as much as we would all love easy answers, we would love to have a list of suppliers that we can just go to purchase responsibly sourced materials. The position that we're in now as an industry really requires that we develop our own critical thinking skills about these issues. We develop the skills to choose the practices that align with our desired impact. So in our first ethics session, Mark shared some frameworks that we can use to help guide this decision-making. And so we're just going to share these on the screen. You can read a bit for yourself. I'll give an example, but we can reiterate these frameworks throughout the session. You're welcome to go back and check out the recording of the first session on our website. And we can apply these throughout our conversation today. So with this little refresher, sorry, I just want to keep my notes open while I do this. Can you guys see okay?
That's good.
Okay. So with this little refresher, we have the Consequentialist Framework, which asks the question, what are the apparent consequences of my decision or action? Are any of these consequences unacceptable to me? Are they so unacceptable that I'm not willing to do it? If these are acceptable, what are the costs? We have the deontological framework, which asks, what are my principles based on? What do I love and care about most? If I do this, will I be violating those principles? We also have the virtue ethical framework. Is this action or decision the best thing I can do given what I believe? If I do this, will I betray myself? Will I betray the person I hope to be? Will I undermine myself? And then the feminist framework. In doing this, am I being careful? Am I harming those that I care about most? Am I harming any others whom I have care for? So we've been using these frameworks as different lenses through which we can think about challenges in the industry. And one example of a challenge that we've been thinking about a lot is artisanal gold sourcing, artisanally mined gold. And so if we're using a deontological framework, which is more of a rules-based framework, we might be considering responsible sourcing of gold through the lens of compliance or a standard. So we might ask, do these practices match these rules or these principles? When it comes to artisanal and small-scale gold mining, there are many that cannot meet those kind of standards or rules. Is that the most ethical decision for us to be making? Alternatively, we might look at it through a virtue ethical framework, which asks, is this action the best thing I can do given what I believe? Well, if we're holding the belief that ethical sourcing relies on artisanal miners being able to benefit and have access to markets, we might reconsider a rules-based approach and think about other methods of sourcing that can match that value. So this is not to make any statement, but this is just to give an example of how you might use these frameworks to look at problems through different lenses. So they're here for you to look at, and we can revisit these throughout the session if anybody would like. So we would love to know if any of you were on this last session with us, the first ethics session, if you have used any of these frameworks, if one of these in particular resonated with you, feel free to add that in the chat box. We can keep that as part of the discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing. So for today, we're going to start with an ethical dilemma that we know is at the top of many of your minds. And this is the issue of greenwashing. If you aren't familiar, greenwashing is the practice of advertising or marketing claims about being environmentally sustainable or eco-friendly. And often these claims are not substantiated and they're intended to benefit the seller. So for example, somebody might advertise that this is green and made with recycled content. That might be deceptive if the environmental costs of using that recycled content outweigh the environmental benefits of using it. We might also think about misleading advertising in terms of whitewashing, which is altering a narrative in a way that erases people of color and promotes a narrative that benefits white people. Or our friend Cecilia at Giavari has given us the term of good washing. You're telling a story about the good thing you are doing without really acknowledging the challenges or shortcomings of that work. So one of the most common questions we get, including in this most recent round of probing for questions, is how to avoid greenwashing in making claims, and how to identify if other companies and brands are greenwashing in their claims. Is there a better way to talk about our commitments to ethical practices and claims? So with that said, I'm going to turn it back to Mark and Christina to start our conversation on this. But we encourage you all to leave your questions in the chat box, or if you'd like to come on video and come be a part of the conversation and pose a question there, you are always welcome. Thanks.
Mark, we can go straight to you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm grateful to be a part of the conversation today. Thank you, Maggie and Christina, for inviting me to the living room. And thanks, Alix, for the work you're doing for Ethical Metalsmiths and for being my best friend for 31 years. It's been a pleasure to learn about the jewelry industry and metalsmithing and so much more from you. To revisit a theme that I brought up at the last session, I think whenever we talk about ethics and maybe more importantly, whenever we wish to act ethically, which ideally would be all the time, it's important to center ourselves. It's important to have composure and regain composure if we're off balance. So just taking a deep breath and centering ourselves, paying attention to where we are, reflecting on why we're here now together, reflecting on why it's important to be here now together talking about this. And again, breathing and getting in touch with your body, the mind and the body. If they're not identical, they're very closely intertwined. And being ethical is a way of being in the world, and it requires a conscious awareness of the truth of the moment, the truth of the decisions we're trying to make in that moment. So it really does require mindfulness, as that term gets used often these days, an awareness of our intentions and our awareness of our environment, our awareness of our values. So just take a moment to breathe. So the idea today was to engage in what some philosophers will call applied ethics, where we take some of our frameworks for decision making, which can be discussed at a theoretical level, considering their soundness, but which can be used in concrete situations to help us make decisions. It's part of why we engage in the theory, right? It may be the value of the theory that we can apply it in our lives to make better decisions. Specifically, the question of greenwashing that Maggie brought up would be a case of applying ethical decision-making to a question about our business practices. So this might fall under the framework of business ethics. More generally, as artists, as creators, as owners and operators of businesses hoping to sell our creations, our work, there's the question of how to convey the truth about the work, how to evaluate claims other people are making about the truth of their work or their products. Fundamentally important question. Ties back to one of the other main themes of the last session, which is the importance of truth in ethics. So I want to stop and I want to turn to a question that is implicit in Maggie's lead, but also I want to make sure that we have an opportunity for you to raise specific questions related to the theme of greenwashing or other issues that you think we really should discuss because it's crucial for you. And Christina, I'll turn to you to moderate that piece. And I'll continue to facilitate the discussion around the decision-making. So feel free to use the chat. Feel free to weigh in with audio. And since it's not always easy to do this, to raise questions in these contexts, especially questions in ethics, I'll take a moment just to reflect and breathe and get in touch with the question you really need to ask. I've been a professor for 25 years or more, and there's nothing more important than the silence before the questions emerge.
I have a question.
Please, Saskia, please ask.
Hi. I find it very overwhelming. In Belgium, we're only on the tip of starting anything to do with ethical mining, responsible mining, sustainability. Yes, in other sectors we have it. We see it in the design world, in the architects world, but in the jewelry industry, it's still very much, oh no, it's impossible. You know, it's very much the old ways of thinking, which are still very much there. I'm one of the few jewelers who's Fair Mind licensee. Fair trade, forget it. We can't even get hold of it here. And Fair Trade Belgium has also said to me, oh no, we're just concentrating on the food. You know, your sector is far too small. It's not of our interest. So I feel like I'm wading in the dark. I've been a member with the Ethical Metalsmiths and on your platform since 2018, and your conversations are amazing. I don't always know if I have anything to contribute because of the fact that like I said, I'm very much on my own. The Belgians also have a mentality of, oh no, if you're another jeweler, I'm not going to tell you my secrets. You know, it's the sharing is very much, well, maybe because our country is so tiny, we feel that there are all too many jewelers and the competition is too big or too great. So it's very difficult to kind of, find my way. I filled in the form. I was talking to Alexandra past couple of days, and I filled in the work ethics form that you add to your Ethical Metalsmith platform when you become a member. And there were a lot of questions that I thought, oh yeah, I think I do this, but like I said, I don't have anything to gauge myself against. And so I'm finding this very overwhelming. So I wouldn't know where to start, or I don't know if anyone else feels the same. I'm assuming that most of you are far more ahead or clued up about what's going on than I am. So yeah, I don't know if it's a question that I really have, or just a grievance, or lots of things just going on in my head that because of I don't really have anyone to talk to here. I'm also a teacher. I teach goldsmith techniques to adult education. So I try and share as much as I know with the ethics, ethics maybe not. I try not and use those words because I don't know if I use them correctly. I don't know. So I tend to stick to responsible because I think that kind of covers a bit more of what I know, that, you know, responsible mining within the gold industry, within the gemstone industry. So yeah, so I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing that in there and hoping that there will be a few things coming back.
Mark,
Thank you.
before you respond, Saskia, I just want to honor that. Maggie and I have many conversations with individuals that reach out to us. The folks at Ethical Metalsmiths have many conversations on this topic, and the starting point is always try not to be overwhelmed, because there are not many answers out there, and so we're all navigating this in real time. There are some roadmaps, but when you really get into the sticky questions that you're talking about, it takes a lot of time and research to unpack them. So you are very welcome here. I'm sorry you feel so alone in Belgium. We'll have to work on that because there are pockets of folks all over Europe like this group. There's a group in Spain. There's a group in the UK. So it's the conversations are there, but I just want to say, like, you're doing great. I know you are because I follow what you're up to. So thank you for your leadership, and want to hand it to Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. And thank you, Saskia, for your expressed concerns and for being open and honest about your sense of vulnerability and being overwhelmed. And I'll echo what I think is implicit in what Christina said, which is that this community is a community of courageous and caring people. And we have the technology now to create forums where we can be together, where otherwise we might be alone. And I think it's incredibly important to be together in moral community, working towards common purposes. And that's why I think what Christina has been doing for many, many years, and now with Maggie and with Ethical Metalsmiths leadership, doing still to create a moral community around these issues. Although our agency is often conceived of in atomistic terms, and I talked about this last time, although often we consider ourselves self-sufficient individuals capable of braving the storm alone, in reality, as McIntyre teaches us, we're dependent animals. We're social animals. We depend on each other. We need each other, especially when we have to move towards very difficult changes. And here we're trying to develop an industry from where it is to an ideal we hope it will embody, right? An ethical industry. Another point, old concepts, but still valuable concepts for this discussion. We all have power where it matters. The Stoics teach us that we are in a position to make choices, and no one can deprive us of that choice. How we choose to respond to what we're offered by the world is perhaps our most precious gift and power. It takes a lot of courage to make the right choice, but we have the power to make the right choice, and with the right kind of support from communities like this, we can make the right choices with more confidence, and we can build our courage to transform Belgium, right? I think of that wonderful young woman who sailed the seas alone to try to save the planet, and what an impact she had, and what courage. But she couldn't have done it without the support of her family and the support of all the people along the way who helped her. I also think it's an important concept, the concept of humility. Not because it diminishes us to be humble, but because it helps us to feel comfortable knowing the limits of our power and not asking too much of ourselves. It may not be possible to change Belgium on my own. What I can do is look to see what is available to me and do my best to move the conversation and the activity in my industry in the right direction. And who knows what that will lead to, but I don't have to hold myself to perfection. I don't have to hold myself to actually transforming the industry on my own in a short period of time. That's a staggering request to make of myself, unrealistic, and likely damaging to my capacity to do anything. It can overwhelm me to the point where I feel impotent. And again, the lead question in the decision-making, and this is common across ethical frameworks. So the 4 frameworks we looked at all ultimately touch down on this question. What is most important? And in the context of the question of greenwashing, what is most important for me, given the actions I can undertake right now, with respect to this possible case of greenwashing? And so in the context of trying to create an ethical practice in your business in Belgium, there are a whole set of complicated problems to solve. Which is most important today? what can I do today to make progress towards what I think is most important? That's a modest but critical place to be. And just being there is more than half the battle. Because a lot of sound and fury in ethics keeps us distracted from the basic question: what can I do today, right now, to make the world a better place and to live according to my values, where I am, given what I can do? I hope that's helpful and ties to some of the considerations we were discussing last time.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting to hear. I appreciate that, and also I've been reading the comments, and thank you very much for everyone's input. And it's nice to see that I'm not alone. But yeah, as you were saying, I mean, I guess I was interviewed recently by a governing body who are actually observing the diamond industry in Belgium. They got my contacts through the Anna, I can't pronounce her name, she's Danish, and she a jeweler, and she'd set up or tried setting up the conscious jewelry campaign in Europe, and it was also, but that's specifically for the diamonds, and they contacted me because they wanted to know feedback and reactions. So there's going to be a film coming out on that, and hopefully that'll bring more awareness in Belgium. And I was asked questions. They invited, I think they said about 15 jewelers from around Belgium to react to a film which they were making concerning the diamond industry and the diamond mining. And they said that I was the most fair mind or fair trade minded person that they'd spoken to that day and that they'd come across. They'd met also a lot with people who hit brick walls and said, no, it's impossible. You know, it's being steered, it's being manipulated. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see when that comes out and how Belgium and the jewelry industry in Belgium will react to that. And it'll be interesting to see how the Antwerp World Diamond Center will react to that as well, and maybe change their position a bit and open up more and try and, like I said yesterday in another Zoom meeting for a women's group that I'm with, they asked for some inspiration from each of us, and I ended the conversation saying, you can't change the wind, but you can change the direction of your sails. So I'm hoping that the diamond industry in Antwerp will do the same. So yeah. So, but thank you for the insight and the explanation, and keep my fingers crossed on my end.
Congratulations on your work, Saskia.
Yeah, wonderful.
We're looking forward to that video coming out. I'm aware of its production and look forward to that. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah. I'm glad you're part of it. It's good. So I wanted to go sort of a little super specific with another question in the chat that's coming in, totally related to the greenwashing piece, and that it really comes from every intention to do things the right way, right, for the individual. And so Christina Mall, I'm wondering if you want to unmute and just sort of explain the challenge that you're experiencing right now, because yours, you know, you are very committed to finding out the information, and it takes a while to find out, and then you have to deal with what people are telling you. So if you would explain that to everyone, it would be great.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of other designers have come up with this. And it goes back to Mark, the frameworks that you set out. And I have been thinking a lot about what you discussed in the first session. I have a hard time even coming up with the framework that works for me because I feel like I don't have full information. I don't have all the pieces of what looks like a very enormous puzzle. So how do I even know the consequences of my decision? How do I know the impact? Because I'm relying on other people, middlemen, let's call them, a couple of women, but especially in colored gemstones. So with gold, I am Fair Mind certified, and I really trust that certification system. I'm very pleased with that. I've really dug deep into recycling. If someone says it's recycled, how do I really know? I still have some questions about that, but you know, I don't take just anyone's word for that. I've asked for documentation, which I think we can all do. Powerful tool to pose those questions even of our suppliers. But colored gemstones is really tricky. So my gemstone dealers, I have bought Moyo and Anza, and I'm so proud of that, but I feel like it's extremely expensive and it doesn't also meet all of my clients' requests or even my own design needs. So am I even justified purchasing colored gemstones if someone doesn't have that same chain of custody and cannot give me all the information I'm looking for? Brandy raised a good point. I can put my value systems or my to writing, or even ask them to do the same so that I have something in writing, which is a very good idea. But they are Jains. It's their personal ethical view and religious view that to do no harm to any living creature, and that includes Mother Earth as well as other human beings. So they have personal ethical standards that are very much in keeping with mine, but it's not the same as a Fair Mind certification system. It's not the same as Moya, where I know the people and I trust that when they tell me the conditions on the ground, and I've heard from the women miners who say we're part of the negotiations, we're being fairly paid, we're actually has some agency over how we get paid and the price. I don't have those answers. So am I even justified in making that purchase? I don't want to leave out miners, but how do I even, should I just buy something that's already been set 50 years ago and reset it? Can I call myself responsible or ethical if I don't know what every mine and market looks like? Sorry, that was a long question, but once I start, it's hard to stop.
That's wonderful. The clusters of questions that come together reveal the complexity of the issues. Christina, did you want to say something first?
No, I'm happy for you to hop in.
So Christina, is it Mal or is it Maye? Mal?
It's small, but I would answer to either. It's fine.
Thank you for the questions. Just want to acknowledge some of the questions that have come up in the chat in relation to Christina's question too. There's this question about verification and trust in the chat. Very important question about what we call epistemic virtue, the excellences of knowing things. How do we verify that something's true? And who can I trust to tell me the truth? Really important questions. And another question about rules. There's the note that there are legal guidelines in the US regarding green and environmental claims. And there's a very important distinction there between the actual or the positive laws, the actual or the positive rules, the ones that are on the books, as opposed to the ideal rules or the best rules given our values. And it isn't always true that positive law maps onto natural law or divine law or the laws of love, as we might put it. So another important question about the legitimacy of the rules that might be on the books. Whom do they serve most? Who made them? And whom do they serve? But the questions that I heard from you, Christina, the lead questions that I was identifying were, on the one hand, how do I construct my own ethical framework? How do I evaluate the ones that are out there and make a decision about how to develop my own? I wish there were a simple way, an easy, quick way to do that. But as I said last time, the very effort, the intention to be ethical and to develop an ethical framework is enough, as long as you follow through on the intention and do the work to realize the intention. It's not enough just to have the intention, but to put the intention into action and choice. And then it is work to develop the framework. And some of that work can involve learning about the frameworks, and that's when some of the philosophical work in ethics is useful. But maybe more importantly, talking with other people in this community, for example, finding out what their ethical framework looks like, comparing it with the ethical framework you have in place already, asking the hard questions about the other person's framework that might make them uncomfortable, but will help you to understand why they have it, if they have good reasons for it, you know. I can't overstate the importance of reflecting with those minds whose products we've preserved and cherish in the philosophical traditions in the world, who've thought through these issues with great insight. And I'm happy to provide more references to these kinds of works to help. But in situ, in your actual work, right, you confront problems that no one's confronted before, and you may have to come up with rules and frameworks for decision making that haven't been discussed before, haven't been developed before, because you're in a unique environment, a unique context, and you're thinking things through, maybe for the first time. Very interesting question that emerges in this context. You know, how do I know the consequences of my actions? Extremely difficult to know all of the consequences of any action, even the actions we're familiar with. It may be true that each action has an infinite number of consequences, and in which case we would never be able to know all the consequences. The relevant considerations are the proximate consequences and the not too distal consequences of the action, and our best effort to discover what those are is what we should hold ourselves to. You know, we have to ask the questions of the dealers we work with. We have to look into the information available that discusses the facts about the impacts of various practices on the environment, for example, right? And you gave an excellent example of this, right? If you are working with sincere Jains and you're in a position to trust the person telling you that they've done thus and so, it's perfectly legitimate to purchase from that person whatever it is we're talking about, gems. If they're telling you the truth and they did what they said, and what they said conforms to your values and your ideals, then you don't need to have an additional set of guidelines to honor that practice and legitimate the purchase, right? In another context where you're dealing with a person with whom you don't have that personal connection, maybe a more straightforwardly mercantile relationship, then you might need to trust guidelines. But then I think it becomes important to ask questions about the guidelines and the people who set those up. Many philosophers have urged us to live within a human scope We talk a lot about globalism. We talk a lot about the international economy, and it does facilitate a remarkable scaling effect. In a lot of ways, it's perhaps very good. On the other hand, nothing replaces the personal relationship with someone you trust to ensure that you're getting what you are being told you're getting. So it's not easy to know. And I think the critical questions need to be asked. And I think that that's a common theme in the ethical decision-making frameworks. You must be responsible to the action by asking questions before doing it. The question of trust in persons versus trust in systems is sort of fundamental here, across the question about verification and trust, across the question of positive rules versus ideal rules. One of the glories of this kind of community is you come together and you provide a multiplication of the people you can rely on when you need to make a crucial decision that you feel you should not make without making sure it's right. Alix and I belong to various organizations that are defined by trust relationships. That's why they exist, to create trust relationships. And so we can count on someone in that community elsewhere whom we don't know directly to be trustworthy, because the nature of the community is such that it lives, thrives, and persists by way of building trust. And I think of this group as doing that kind of work for people like you and Saskia and everybody here, who want to do this work as individuals, but need a community of trust within which to make better decisions and to develop the framework.
May I pop in?
Oh yeah, yeah.
We have sort of a special circumstance in our meeting today. We have a few gemstone suppliers that are actually participating in our meeting today. One is here for the first time. Ahmed, if you could wave, it would be nice so everyone knows. Ahmed is arriving new to us. This is the first time he's joined one of these sessions, and he has his own questions for you. Right? So how do you flip this around? So some of the questions you're struggling with is, I'm sourcing, I want to trust my supplier. I want this and this information. I want to be able to make this claim on my website. I want my customers to be able to trust. And ultimately, I want to do good, right? That's mostly everyone here is not as much in the position of doing no harm. They're more in the position of, I want to do good with the choices that I make. So how do I verify that I'm doing good with the purchase that I'm making? So Ahmed's question to all of you is, well, what do you want from me? Kind of what do you need to trust me? So would you like to introduce yourself first, Ahmed? Welcome to the group, and then maybe we can talk about that question a bit.
Okay, hold on. Thank you. Hi, Ellen. I know you're somewhere there. And I've been an online trader of gemstones for the past 23 years. And I met Ellen about maybe 15 years ago. So I stumbled on this, and I want to know, as a supplier from Sri Lanka, I want to know what kind of things that you need me to do. Right now, we don't use child labor. We give a fair wage to our workers. I have a lapidary, and we give a fair wage. We have work incentives and all kinds of health benefits to our workers. So what else do you need, and what kind of certification do you need? As a supplier, I need to know what you all need.
Well, I'd love to hear what other people say, but I think that's also just off the bat extremely helpful to know. And I think any way that we could collectively, or maybe I should speak just for myself, that I could have some of that information more distilled in my mind, or even in writing, or even a visual. For example, Hoover and Strong, I really think so highly of them. They have on their website videos that show their processing system. They invite people to come to the facility. Maybe you have to, set that up obviously ahead of time. Now it's COVID and all that, but there's a transparency with images, photos. They talk about all their environmental standards on their website, what's recycled, what's not, how do they define recycled. They give the Fairmind, Eco Fairmind, craft, all those definitions. So I think the more information in terms of definitions or visuals, what you just said, anything that could be in writing or visually, it's a way to really know it and distill it. And then it also would help me communicate it. And it's so nice to hear from you. And thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you. It's a good idea because our government is the main driver for the sustainable. Until recently, this is for your information, I don't know whether you know it, mechanized mining was banned in Sri Lanka until quite recently, maybe about a year or so, because we want to keep our wealth, that is the gemstones, in the ground. It has been there for 1,000 years and we want it to be there for another 1,000 years. So mechanized mining was banned. Even before they give a mining permit, they have to have a deposit. This deposit is used to cover the mine up if they don't cover it. So it's a substantial amount that they take to cover the cost of expenses after they mine. So things like that have been going on. I don't know whether you all know about this, what's happening in Sri Lanka, but we have been mining for 1,000 years. We need to keep on going on for 1,000 years. So that's what we are doing. And thank you very much for your information on videos and in writing. That's a good idea. Thank you so much. I will work on something like that.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, Brian, I wanted to add that you're here also as one of the suppliers in the supply chain. So go for it.
Yeah. Hi, Ahmed, and welcome. Sri Lanka is a unique country. It's one of the more advanced as far as ethics go as a country. And as Ahmed just spoke, the country considers its gemstones a resource for future generations. So they're not interested in mining everything at once, as he said. So they are maintaining an artisanal sort of status countrywide. And that's a really interesting policy. In most other countries, it's, mine as quick as you can, get as much as you can and get it to market. And that's part of the problem. And to your question, Christina, and for our friend Ahmed here, I think that we can deliver more information directly from the communities that are actually mining and show what is going on, whether it's well done or poorly done or sparsely done. As much information as we relate about what's really happening on the ground, that's going to help you as makers and cutters to be able to tell your clients what's going on truthfully. So I think being truthful about where you're actually at and what's actually happening on the ground is a good thing for us to do as suppliers. So Ahmed, I don't know if you're involved in mining or if you're invested in the miners, but you have direct contact with those miners and their communities. So those are stories that we can bring to all the folks out there that are using the stones. And it's going to increase in time. It is now the whole industry is clamoring for our stories, whether they know it or not, but that's the direction we're headed.
I would also add on top of that, Brian, that there are a lot of people in the industry with a real desire to contribute towards this momentum of going towards a more responsible and sustainable industry. And it's only through transparency that we're able to see those opportunities to keep improving. So I think there are a lot of people in the industry that are interested in supporting opportunities to do better. And when we talk about these things transparently, it informs us of where those opportunities lie.
Yeah, there's several initiatives emerging, and you know, how to promote those initiatives. That's one of the questions that, you know, through our community we can help divulge. But even in my case, for example, this year we're focused on getting food and protective masks for the miners that don't have them. And, you know, we've raised a little bit of money, but even that little bit, we've been able to bring food to remote miner families and also to elderly, especially with the current pandemic. But you know, these are the stories that we can give to you, the buyers of stones and the makers of jewelry. And so the more of us who are suppliers that can bring those stories out, it will be like a snowball. It's going to grow and grow and grow. And our message will be, I think, well accepted.
As kind of a general statement before we move to Mark, with the evolution of increased awareness and understanding about artisanal and small scale gold mining, whether that be, or not just gold, whether that be gemstones, diamonds, gold, lithium, cobalt, coltan, right? Whether it's like any of those minerals, we're increasingly aware. And probably the most important thing is, you know, you're not looking for perfect, you're looking for information. And then with that information, you're making a decision. Can you be part of the change? Can you be part of an improvement in that capacity? Where we do really need to be cautious is when those environments have people at the helm that are controlling the artisanal miners with bad intent, right? So with illicit intent or with corrupt intent. And that also does occur in our supply chain. So, you know, oftentimes though, what you're dealing with are everyday people who are trying to survive and are looking for assistance on how to get more value out of what they produce. So that's the spirit with which your inquiry takes place. It's to find out information, and then you make a decision on that. And increasingly, with ASM, we have to be open and willing, and this is also a challenge to much larger members of the jewelry industry, sort of being open to the challenge of sourcing from ASM where the guarantees of perfection do not exist.
Mm-hmm.
May I make a comment, Christina?
Hi,
in
Peter.
relating to this, because this is a global industry, I think there is an aspect about communication that needs to be emphasized. What people think as relative standards in their own country or maybe even in the continent do not necessarily hold it in other parts of the system. And I think Ahmed's comment about the fact that Sri Lanka has a very long-term view isn't as widely known amongst a lot of consumers as it should be. I think it's a testament to every Sri Lankan that their government that they say supports them in its way. But it is a very difficult thing to put forward when you're talking at a micro level. I'm partially saying this because we're doing a project on ethical gold relate to government policy. I'm already finding at different levels, different things start influencing. So it's actually a very complicated thing to try to get information on, because there's a benchmark of expectation that vary depending on regions, countries, federal nations, national nations. So talk about the EU, there is different expectation, and that sort of colors us the benchmark. And that's one of the aspects about ethics that probably, if we get back to Mark in a minute, talking about that is about your own benchmark, but also the understand what is really considered a bench amongst different communities, which makes it very problematic. I think it's something that having sort of information and recognize that not only your decisions, but the decisions of those in the communities or the countries you live in might be quite different from what happens elsewhere. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Peter.
Hello?
Does anybody else want to follow up?
Yeah, I would like. Hi, I'm Ana Sierra. I'm in Bogota, Colombia.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, everybody. So good to see you all, even from the distance. Yeah, what I do right now is jewelry. On time, I met Juana Mendez, who's here too. She did a research on jewelry on the Chocó, and that changed completely my perspective. I am a Fairmine licensee and started doing some contemporary jewelry, and then shift completely towards trying to reconstruct a very interesting circle that is in the Chocó. That's a region where there's gold since centuries ago, and they do jewelry. And there's this local circle, and I realized that that information made me realize that it's not only about me. And I think that's very important. And the more I read about ethics, the more I take classes on development, and I realized that a lot of what we should do is, and it's not easy when you end up doing design and jewelry, because they're all self-expression disciplines, so to say. But the more I think in ethics, I think we have to think about the others. We are part of, we navigate different systems in all these frameworks. We have to do with legal issues. We have to do with illegal issues. I mean, Colombia, for example, has a very difficult problem with illegal trade in gold. And if we are here, we have to avoid that, and we have to do it consciously. And being many in this chain, from the sources, the impact the sources might have in nature, fauna and flora, all the ethic issues around that, the complex situation that it might mean. For example, in artisanal mining, it's not as simple as saying, I know the source of it and I only buy from the right source. What about the people that is submerged between the lack of opportunities and the need to participate in those illegal systems? And so on along the production chain, like what about needing stones from other countries and knowing that there's a lot of people that only puts them in the pocket and flies across countries and sells them, and how to know the traceability and so on. But everything to say that I think that more and more we should do an effort to try to understand the ethics of the others along the production chain. And more we should try to involve in these conversations the others that have a totally different perspective. For example, I keep asking myself, what about the large scale mining? We should be speaking with them. I mean, if groups like these, which I appreciate highly because they help us think and try to understand these complex ideas and systems, if we really want to produce a positive change, I think we should not only think about the others. And for example, in the Chocó work that Juana does is, what do the local miners and jewelers want? Is it also what I think they need or not? And in the other side, how do we invite others that might not have the same ethics that we have to discuss, to try to create a more open conversation, like what I think Susan is doing in Chicago, like raising the voices of those who don't have the power to speak to the people that produces the law, or and inviting the people that might be in the same systems and it's thinking differently. I don't know if I made myself clear, but it's like, as many of you have mentioned, I have a lot of questions, not many answers. Every time I want to do something, I find that there might be like, from the intention to the decision to the facts to the impact, I might not agree with everything I do every day. I try to improve it. Sometimes I feel that I'm judging others. I have many, many questions, but more and more I think about those two things. Involving the other really deeply and trying to understand and share what they want, what they need, what their ethics are. And in the other hand, what about the people that is completely outside this system? How can we talk to them? How can we involve them? Because I think those two things will help us propel change. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Peter shared in his chat link to what looks like a conferencing project. Is that right, Peter?
It's a scoping project. We're being funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, scope all the creative industries for successful sourcing. So amongst other things, I'm doing jewelry. I'll be chasing a few of you later if you want to contribute. But yeah, it's a scoping project.
Yeah. So I highlight that because since Ahmed began the conversation, and it's nice to meet you, Ahmed. And Brian, good to see you again. The question of communication is central. And the questions we have to ask the dealers, the clients, the industry, the questions we have to ask each other are essential to the dialogue that enables us to build trust, and ultimately the systems, the constructs, the means, the technologies for working together in a global environment where we can't always count on our intuitive capacities in personal relationships to establish trust, personal trust with the person who's there with us in the room, not in the Zoom room, but in the room or on the street. We've evolved to engage in sociability and trust relations in space-time contexts that aren't mediated by this kind of technology we're using this morning. We're having to try now to do the business we would have done with our neighbors, with people who are thousands of miles away. Puts ever more weight on the systems of communication, and our need to dialogue with each other, our need to ask the questions becomes that much more important. And there are various systems for thinking about this at a philosophical level. I'll just mention one as an example. Jürgen Habermas developed a theory of communication, communicative action, he called it, and he's thought very hard about how to engage in ethical action in a pluralist world, right? In a world where lots of different folks have different values and need to get along, need to be able to pursue their values while allowing other people to pursue their values. And again, I just want to remind us of two very different but related considerations. There's the question of what I can do today in order to realize my values, given the kinds of actions available to me today. And the aspiration we might have to create a global system of ethical mining industries, a global system of ethical jewelry industries, a global system of ethical economic activity. That's a wonderful ideal. I'm certainly doing everything I can to, with my limited capacity as a buyer, my limited capacity as a citizen, to forward that agenda. But I don't want to render myself impotent because that doesn't exist yet. I need to remember that I must move to the best of my ability towards those goals, given what is in front of me right now today. And again, this conversation is the place where that kind of individualized decision-making can happen. So I don't think it's accidental. I think it's essential to moving this effort forward that someone like Ahmed is able to communicate with someone like Christina and ask, so what do you need from me? We as the jewelers need to be asking, well, what do I want from the Belgian government? What do I want from the Sri Lankan government? What do I want from the UK government? What kind of information do I want? Do I need, given the values I have? And how shall I ensure that I get it? And this leads to the broader question that's been raised a number of times. Once I get information from somebody after having asked them the question or asked them for information, how can I trust it? How can I verify it? And that leads to yet further questions. Is there a system of verification? If there isn't, can we build one? Who's telling me what? Why should I believe them? If I have a personal relation with Ahmed and I've had a chance to communicate with him over Zoom and he's provided me with evidence that I find credible, well then maybe there I've got a way to purchase without further doubts. But as Brian's noting, there's a whole set of considerations now in different countries. You're buying from all kinds of different people. And we have to ask those hard questions about why should I believe this company's rhetoric around ethical practices? Is there any evidence to the contrary from labor union publications, governmental studies, third-party independent studies? And I take it that one of the pieces of the work that Christina and Alexandra and Maggie and Jared and other leaders like yourselves are doing is you're creating a repository of information. You're creating an archive that people can access in order to find out what's known and check claims that are being made. So I think it's just wonderfully exciting to see the interplay here between the very specific and personal requests from Ahmed on the one hand and the response that he was getting, and then the more globally oriented consideration about communication that Peter's bringing up. Because there we're seeing the range of complexity that we face, all of us now, as ethical agents.
We're at that point in the conversation where we need to start to bring it to a bit of a close. Thanks to everyone for staying on for the duration. Because this is our first meeting of the year and we have such a great group today, I would love it if everyone wanted to turn on their cameras and we can do a little bit of a group shot wave sort of moment, because it is an incredible thing that kind of happens when we all get to talk to each other. You all look beautiful. No one will be able to see your hair from this tiny little screenshot. No worries. You know, you can. So give us a wave. I'm going to do a couple on the different pages. Hi. And I'll do another one. And when we do these, your names don't show up. So that's kind of nice in terms of public. Let's do one more. Okay, your biggest, cheesiest smile you've got. Thank you. And there's some folks on the other screen. Let me get everyone. Okay, cheesiest. Woo, everyone looks so great. Thank you, we got it. Sorry to put you all on the spot.
It's great. It feels so good to see everyone in one place, even if it's in a Zoom room.
Yeah. So some things coming back. Lisa Konigsberg was able to join us, not in those first few minutes, but she's here now. And so she's at the helm of initiatives in art and culture, who we are partnering with in the February living room session on the 19th. And to give you a little bit more insight on that, we're going to really be unpacking that recycled gold question. We're happy to take some more of your questions. We've generated many over the years that people have asked about it. And what that conversation is going to do is it's going to seed the need for further expert opinion, right? We all know as much as we know, but none of us are metallurgists. And none of us are studied economists on the flow of gold. And sorry if you are, and I just don't know that about you. But we're going to use that to sort of figure out who are the best experts to bring in a further webinar that Initiatives in Art and Culture will host, so that we can, really figure out what is it that we don't know about this topic. We know a lot. So what are the really key things that we don't know about recycled gold that we can really hear from people that do? So I hope you're all able to join on the 19th, and we'll add some more information about Initiatives in Art and Culture to our Living Room Sessions webpage, so that you can find out more there. Lisa, would you like to say anything real quick? Putting you on the spot.
Yes, hi everybody, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
There are actually a few things that we can be happy about, and I encourage you to savor that moment. We are very delighted to be collaborating with Christina and Maggie in offering this February living room session on recycled gold, which is actually an issue that spans millennia. And so that's an element that might, for example, enter into our thinking. And we are equally honored that we will collaborate in producing a webinar that reflects what we learn and what we glean and the additional questions that you raise. I'm easily found through Initiatives in Art and Culture, and I'm a loyal supporter of EM. I'm on the advisory board, and it's really wonderful to be with everyone today. So thank you for the moment, Christina, and happy to answer anybody's questions or have chats or what have you. So thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. So maybe let's just a final round of gratitude to Mark. We really appreciate the way you on the fly, figure out a way to give us a little bit more to chew on and think about, in the context of your expertise. So we're really grateful, and thanks.
thank you all for your leadership, and peace and love in the new year, and look forward to future sessions.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Have a fabulous Friday.
Yep.
All right. See you. Oh, the recording will be online probably in a few days.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.